Welcome to the Painting Lines Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things tennis. Join Erik and Aidan in their discussion for updates on news and pop culture, and from hot takes to betting, they've got you covered.
Ready?
Welcome back to the Painting Lines Podcast. Last week we talked about the Madrid Open and gave a kind of a recap of that. And this week we're going to be diving into a kind of controversial topic, and that's the topic of coaching in tennis. Tennis is really a unique sport because it has so much mental difficulty. It's maybe the most mentally difficult sport. You're left alone on the court, and a lot of people think of it almost like a gladiator arena. It's just you and your opponent, and you are the only person that can be held responsible for every single point out there. To me, this is kind of what makes it the greatest sport. The momentum of a match can shift from one point to the next. An unforced error can lead to a sequence of mistakes, and all of a sudden, you lose the match out of nowhere. But in the modern game, there's been a push from some players to allow for more on-court coaching, and this has stemmed a pretty intense debate. So, Erik, what's your personal opinion on this? What do you think about on-court coaching?
Yeah, like you said, this is a very controversial and interesting subject. My personal opinion, I'm not for it. I think, like you said, this is what kind of separates tennis from all the other sports and makes it that much more mental because you have individualistic sports. Take, boxing, for example, or UFC, where it is one on one, but you have their coaches screaming at them the whole time while they're fighting, while they're competing. And essentially, tennis, I think it's better that there is no coaching because it's a person versus a person rather than a coach versus a coach. Because when you get into coaching, I think you start to get into more team sports. So, like, look at football or basketball. A coach is essentially playing against another coach, using his players to execute his game plan. And I think that kind of takes away a lot from tennis. Tennis should be the player versus the player, not the coach versus the coach.
Yeah, I agree. That's a very good point. Tennis is about those two people, not about really the coaches sort of battling against each other. But yeah, it's an interesting thing because the regulations actually changed very recently. In 2022, they sort of tried out a little bit of a trial period of this new rule set in which they allow on-court coaching, and the phrasing was that it's allowed as long as you're doing it in the form of short phrases, and it's not a full conversation, which is a little bit of a vague description.
Right.
I think they want people to be going, look up the line, bend your knees more. I don't know. But the idea is that it's not a back and forth between the player and the coach. And this kind of spawned a little bit of a debate about it because I read one article about Bublik, and he got a penalty because they determined that he was having a dialogue with his coach. This has meant that some players are really looking for a clearer idea of what the regulations are because he felt that it wasn't really a dialogue.
Yeah, no, super controversial. I know before it was technically legal, remember Serena Williams and her coach, she got penalized too. And her coach came out and straight up said, because she tried to deny it. She said, no, I wasn't getting coached. I wasn't getting coached. Her coach actually ended up coming out and saying, yes, I coached her, but it happens all the time. People do it anyway. So I guess you can kind of look at it like, okay, it's going to be done regardless whether or not they outlaw it or not. I just think it takes away the purity of the sport. But I think the players are for it, or most of the players seem like they want it. Um, ultimately it is up to them, not us as spectators. But I think as a fan and a spectator, I'd rather see someone play a player, not a coach.
Yeah, my personal opinion is like having that strong mentality is what separates the wheat from the chaff. It's what makes a player that next level. I think that's what makes it really cool to watch in tennis is that if you see a player miss a shot and then they go for that same shot the next point and they make it, like that's the most incredible thing to see because you're like, this guy was so confident in his ability that even though he just missed that, he's willing to go for it still. You don't want to have a player that's just every time they miss a shot, they're looking to their coach. The idea is that it's those two people, not the two coaches.
Yeah, the idea is, you go out there, you play, you implement your strategy, and then if it doesn't work, you go out and you make adjustments. But then again, I do like the fact that they outlawed the full dialogue because there's no way, yeah, like you said, you can't go to your coach between every point and start having a full-on conversation. But hey, maybe some little adjustments, like you said, bend your knees, keep your head down, drive through the ball. those are going to happen regardless. So I think to just make them legal and then not penalize players, apparently it happens with everyone, it happens all the time. I think that's a step forward in the right direction for the game.
But I mean, the question really is like, how much does it actually impact them, right?
That is a question.
Because even if you're able to have a dialogue with the coach, how much do you really think it's going to impact them?
Hmm. Well, can you think of a certain instance where it might help?
Well, I remember I was watching the Laver Cup a couple of years ago, or maybe it was this recently, and Shapovalov was playing in a match, and McEnroe came up to him and was, I mean, kind of berating him, to be honest. But it was a situation where McEnroe came out to him, told him what he was doing wrong, told him what he needed to change. And I think Shapovalov went out there and started playing better because he knew exactly what his coach wanted him to do. And it seeing it from a third person's perspective can really
Hmm.
help. Like, you're the one playing. It's sometimes hard to know where you're making your mistakes. And having a great coach like that, being able to just be in your ear telling you, oh, you need to change all of these things, and being able to explain it fully is going to have, I think, a way bigger impact than those short phrases, which I think is what the benefit of having it limited to the short phrases is. If it's just a short phrase, they can't give you this in depth explanation of how you need to change. You still need to be able to interpret it on the fly, at least.
Going off that, I wonder how much of the coaching or these adjustments are for the player themselves to see what they're doing versus what the other player is doing. So it's like, for example, hey, keep serving it out wide. His forehand's not there today. Or if it's toss the ball a little more to your left, like making personal adjustments versus picking apart the other player and going after their weaknesses.
I think that's definitely a very case dependent sort of thing. We've talked in the past about how coaching for someone like a Kyrgios or a Shapovalov, who's a very explosive player, the coach would be telling them, "Hey, you need to stay calm. You need to be changing this. You need to be changing this," because they have the tools in their arsenal to be able to beat all of their opponents. In the other case, where the coach is telling them to, oh, you need to look for more shots up the line. You need to be serving out wide more. That's a
Hmm.
case where it's not as mental of a play, like not as much of a mentally fragile player.
Right.
So I think it would be really kind of case to case situation.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think it'd be pretty interesting too as a fan if they were like watching on TV or watching there, if it was kind of public information what they were getting coached, so you can kind of see like, oh, all right, um, Alcaraz's coach wants him to start hitting more drop shots or less drop shots. Because whenever I watch, sometimes you do hear the coaching, but it's either in another language or it doesn't get picked up by the mic or it's cut off because of the TV viewing. So I think it'd be pretty cool to hear the coaching.
Yeah, I mean, like they have that in other sports. Like if you watch a UFC fight or you watch a boxing match, when they go to their corners after the match, or
Yeah.
I mean in between rounds, uh, the coach is there and they have a camera right there listening to what the coach is saying. And I think that does give a little bit of a, for the spectators, it's nice to see, oh, this guy's going to start trying to do this. I wonder if he'll be able to implement it. And you can almost
Yeah.
anticipate how the next sort of thing is going to go.
Yeah. No, think about this. What if in between sets you're sitting down, you throw on your headset and your mic and your coach is telling you what to do?
That'd
That'd
be
be
crazy.
crazy. I
Yeah,
know. It's like a quarterback, when they sit down on the sideline and they have their iPad and then they're on the phone talking to the guy
exactly.
in the box or the coach in the box. Because that is interesting, being a coach and not sitting with your player slash your team on the court with them. Like coaches are in the crowd with the fans, you
I mean, it's
know?
it's kind of like how a an offensive coordinator's up in the box looking down at
Right.
the field.
Right. But at least the offensive coordinator is in his own box with other coaches, whereas the coach here, yeah, you can kind of say they're in their own box, like maybe secluded. But I remember when I was watching Andy Murray and Lajovic, Dusan,
It's actually pronounced Lajovic, apparently.
Leovic,
Thank you
gotcha.
to the commenter on Instagram.
All right, shout out. Yeah, keep us in line. But anyway, yeah, his coach, I was sitting like maybe 2 rows away from Dusan's coach, and it was pretty interesting. I didn't speak Serbian, but it was pretty interesting to be right there, like look at him and see what they're like kind of conversing about, how much you would actually go to him. Whereas any other sport, you don't really have that fan coach interaction. The coach is very like secluded and kind of in their own headspace. They don't have to worry about unruly fans or people shouting out or their players getting distracted.
Yeah, I mean, also
Mm.
going back to the idea of the whether it's a self instruction or like an instruction to beat your opponent. If you can instruct the person on how to beat the opponent, like that's another advantage of even with the coaching, you still have to be mentally strong because it's better to be like if for the coach to be able to say, "Hey, you need to do this to beat the guy," rather than the coach just saying, "Here's how you don't beat yourself."
Mhm.
Because I feel like
Okay.
that's something that would happen. Like if Kyrgios is up there and he's yelling and the coach is just telling him, "Hey, you need to stop doing this. You need to stop doing this. You need to stop doing this." It's not as effective. I feel like as if the coach was able to just say, "Hey, you're already calm. You're already ready for my instruction. Here's what you need to do."
Yeah. No, I think tennis is a very interesting sport because 99% of the coaching is done outside of the match, whereas you have football, basketball. I'd say, obviously you have practice leading up to the game, like in football and basketball. You train with the coach. They implement certain strategies. They tell you what kind of game plan you're going to run. But then during the game, what percent would you say of like coaching is done during a game? Like I honestly 50-50. I think the coaching during the game is just as important, if not more important than the coaching leading up during the preparation.
Yeah, it's very interesting because it's like the more free flowing a game is, the less coaching there is.
Mhm.
You look at something like soccer even where the coach is does make a massive impact. They can make substitutions, stuff like that. But even then, anything could happen on the field. Your game plan may not really be involved. But then
Mhm.
you look at football, like you were saying, every single play, it's
Yeah.
one coach has a game plan, the other coach has a game plan. We're going to
Yeah.
see how they match up there.
Yeah. So all right, I said my personal opinion. I don't love the coaching. What do you think?
I feel that it should be even restricted back to not. I think it would be better for tennis as a overall sport. I think, like you kind of mentioned, maybe it would be cool for the spectators to see coaching and see what the coach
Mhm.
is thinking. But I think overall, being able to just see the mindset of the individual is what makes it exciting. You're looking at these guys and you're seeing exactly what's happening inside of their mind. How does a person deal with, oh, I just dropped 3 games in a row. I just got broken 2 games out of 3. How do they make that shift? How are they able to like maintain control over their mind? And that's what makes it cool to see. If it's just was just, oh, this player is going crazy and then the coach is somehow able to control him, I don't think that tennis should be about the coach. The
Mhm.
the coach shouldn't be the story of the match.
Right. I do see what you're saying, and I like that because you mentioned like mentality. I think the coaching is not very good for the characters of the player either. Like you have these young players who are going to be next gen, who are going to be growing up with this coaching, and they become very dependent on the coaches. They may like not mature as well as previous generations that we've seen. You tend to get more divas, more Stefanos Tsitsipas's, more Shapovalovs. People who are kind of not as composed as someone who say is out there alone, figuring it out themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, obviously, I think the older you get, the less coaching you need when you're out there on the court. But I think if you start them young, then they never really grow up. If you start coaching them super young throughout their matches.
Yeah. And I think
Hmm.
honestly you see that a little bit in just the tennis world in general. When I used to play in youth tournaments, the the players that were had really intense either parents or coaches at the match, those kids were usually the most arrogant and had the were the least mature. Versus if you saw someone that just like showed up and was just playing with no one even there to watch them, those people were usually a lot more humble and a lot more mature.
Right, right. All right. Well, you guys see where we stand. We'd love to hear your opinion. Should coaching be allowed? Yes or no? Why don't we hop into segments here?
Sounds good. Sounds good. What do you have? What's new in tennis for you?
Yeah, this I found super funny. I came across an article that said Djokovic's coach shouts, "What the F is wrong with you?" at Djokovic during the Italian Open. I know, right? Speaking of coaches, I thought I'd keep it along the coaching line. So this I found was not a good look for Djokovic, obviously, when you have your own coach cussing at you. Could be the beginning of the end for him, like we saw the exit, the the loss to Runa. He was a heavy favorite to win this Italian Open. Um, the constant friction between his coach, this isn't the first time this has happened. Djokovic is kind of known for glaring over at his coach and just not really being on the same page most of the time. The thing that sparked this was actually Djokovic was speaking to his coach in the box saying like, "Why are you guys always confused? Why is there so much confusion?" And then that's when his coach just kind of clapped back. So pretty funny, but kind of sad at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just kind of a bummer. I mean, I don't really want to see Djokovic's decline, but I think we can get a little bit more into that actually next week when we talk about the recap of the Italian Open.
Definitely. All right, what's new for you? What did you see?
I mean, massive news just came out today. Nadal pulls out of the French Open. I mean, it's really kind of something that was not super unexpected given the fact that he hasn't really played at any tournaments this year. But it's just a bummer because everybody wants to see him at the French Open. Everybody wants to see Nadal healthy. Nobody hates Nadal. I feel like everybody's a fan of Nadal. Even Federer fans respect Nadal.
hmm
And it just sucks to see it. Like,
Does the worst was I watched the video of they're showing him training, and when he had to like completely call it, he just looked so sad, so defeated. Hands on his hips, looking down, face in his hands. After it was sad. It was sad watching.
yeah, and Nadal talks about it. He's like Djokovic has said in the past that one of the things that motivates him is he wants to be the greatest of all time. He wants to have the most trophies. He wants to have all this stuff. Nadal always says the reason he keeps playing is because he loves the sport and he loves to compete and he loves to be out there. And so
Man.
it really just sucks because his body is just letting him down and the injuries are finally catching up with him. So he said he may actually just shut it down for the whole year and then
hmm
like 2024 maybe his final season on tour.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we did not see the last time Nadal steps on the court. But
Yeah, I hope
moving
not.
on to bet of the week, I'm taking Rude plus 140 over Runa, just a straight bet. This is a big rivalry match. We have, two Scandinavians going at it. Last time in French Open last year, they, had a big beef going on. Runa actually kicked his mom out of the crowd, screaming at her. Gave Rude a very brief handshake at the end, and then they proceeded to talk smack about each other after. It was a huge deal, all in the papers, but I think Rude is going to come out on top despite being the underdog, just because I think this rivalry match is going to get Runa a little flustered. I think he's going to start, we're going to start seeing his immaturity in the match. And I think Rude is going to be more calm and composed and ultimately take this one out.
Yeah, that's really a tough match. I mean, Runa really is on the top of his game right now, though. I mean, just beat Djokovic. Has been playing excellently in all these tournaments. I mean, obviously went to the final in Monte Carlo, and he looks super strong on clay. I mean, I think this could be an incredible match, and because of that, I actually took a bet in the same match, not the same straight bet, but I bet that plus 120. Rune versus Rude goes over 2.5 sets. So it's going to be a 3 set match, is my bet. And I just think that because these are two top level players, and not just top level players overall, top level players on clay. Like these are two guys that are just have been outshining everybody on clay, it seems like. And I think it's just going to be a crazy match to watch. I'm really looking forward to it.
I am too. Definitely gonna tune into that one.
Yeah.
All right, match of the week. I actually had Musetti coming from behind and beating Tiafo. So this was very interesting because first of all, Musetti, Italian crowd. Tiafo was kind of egging on the crowd a little bit by hitting the underarm serve. Obviously, was booed. And then you had Tiafo yelling at the umpire, why are we playing in this rain? I can't play in this. It's coming down. And then once again, getting booed by the Italian crowd. So, common theme, I like matches with drama. This was a very drama infused match. You had a lot of heavy hitting forehands. And then Musetti's gorgeous one handed backhand was, on fire, hitting winners. And then you also have the finesse too. You have the players with amazing touch, great drop shots, great lobs, just an all around great match to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of drama, and I think that's a situation where it's hard to say that either player would be in the wrong in that drama. I mean, if
Hmm.
the rain is really impacting play, then it's only fair for the players to stop. This isn't football where, oh, it's snowing, it's raining, we keep playing.
Hmm.
It's tennis where they stop if the conditions are unsafe or unfair. So if it was unfair to Tiafo, there's a level where he should be able to say, "Hey, I feel like we should stop." And
I agree.
and that's a situation where having the crowd against him, it's kind of unfair that they would be against him. I mean, I understand if they're against him because they're rooting for the Italian guy, but if they're
Hmm.
against him because they're like, "Oh, we want to keep watching the match,"
Yeah.
and he wants to stop because he doesn't feel safe on the court, kind of unfair to me.
Yeah. It's also the first time you really see Tiafo blow up at an umpire. He's usually all smiles and giggles out there. Like he's never
Yeah,
really losing his
usually
his
having a
uh
great
his
time. Yeah,
composure. Yeah. His temper. But yeah, like you said, he probably felt unsafe. I don't know, but
yeah.
what do you have? Who do you have for a match of the week?
My match of the week we kind of talked about earlier. Runa beats Djokovic 6-2, 4-6, 6-2. I mean,
Mm,
it was a match where I think it's an issue that Djokovic has kind of been facing this entire season. He kind of has been starting a little bit slow. Like you've been seeing him lose a lot of first sets, and Rune came out, jumped on him early, broke Djokovic in the first service game, and then Djokovic almost broke back in the second game, had a couple break points, and then held. Then he went on win the first set, and then it looked like he might even force a tiebreak in the second set. He was down 5-3, and then broke Djokovic at 5-3, brought it to 5-4. Then unfortunately he got broke. Fortunately for him, he got broken back, lost the second
mm.
set 6-4. But I don't know what it is because you would think that Runa wouldn't have the strongest mentality based on who he is, based on his how many outbursts he has. But losing the second set did not seem to phase him at all. He immediately came out in the third set, jumped on Djokovic, went up 4-0, and then was able to hold on to win the match. So, really a topsy turvy back and forth match and exciting to watch.
Yeah, I know. I was very surprised Runa beat him like handedly in the third set.
Yeah,
I
because,
was
yeah,
kind of hoping, yeah, you see Djokovic, he's kind of known for losing the first set and then coming back. So that's what I was expecting. I did not think Runa was going to close him out that easily.
yeah. I mean, it's rare that I feel like that you see Djokovic have a situation where the opponent gains so much momentum that all of a sudden they're up 4-0 in a set like that.
So let me ask you this. When at the end of the match, these two players actually embraced each other. It was very cordial.
It
So
was kind of a.
Djokovic
I'll be
being,
honest though. It was kind of an awkward hug. Like it looked like it was like a handshake, and then like Runa kind of leaned in for the hug, and Djokovic
yeah,
was like, "Okay, I guess."
yeah, he's like, he's not gonna look like a salty, vet.
Yeah,
But what I'm thinking is Djokovic is he's nothing but a class act. Like I think he's great out there, but in his head, like how pissed off do you think he is?
I
Do you
mean,
not like? What do you think though when you achieve that level of excellence, and then like, because you can't be mad at your whole career. You can be mad, but I feel like what makes him great is getting over these little losses, right?
I think this is what I think was going on in Djokovic's head when he lost that match. He was thinking, I don't think I should have lost this match. I'm not going to be number one in the world anymore. That pisses me off.
Mm-hmm.
But also, there's a level of to him where he's like, doesn't really matter. I've won enough Italian Opens, and what really matters is that I'm locked in for the French.
Yeah,
I think
because
I
the
think that's what makes him so good. Is like kind of like you were saying, he's ability to like let go of these losses. I think that's what he's doing. He's immediately like, I lost this match, on to the next thing. I got to be able to win the French.
I know that I was asking because Djokovic's vibe whenever he loses a match is he never looks upset. He always smiles and congratulates the other player, and then walks off the court waving, clapping. So I'm just wondering if he's actually mad or if that's just a show.
I think he's mad in his head. I think
Hmm.
it's hard not to be mad after a loss, but
Yeah,
I
I
think
feel that.
he is so mentally strong that he doesn't show it, and he's able to move on to that next match.
All right, well, that's a wrap. I'd really like to hear what you guys think. Should coaching be allowed? Let us know. All right, and that's the show. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Painting Lines Podcast. Feel free to shoot us a DM or email us any questions or thoughts at paintinglinespodcast@gmail.com.